It's AFEX time on Business Morning here on Channels Television, and the market commodity summary for AFEX Exchange for the weekend at the 5th of September has sustained that red color it had this time last week. The number of volume traded slashed the most, over 89%. We have a Motola Kongwe analyst with market and data research analyst with AFEX joining us from our Abuja studio. Hi, Omotola, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. Tell us what's going on in the market. We see a lot of red colors.
Good morning. Good morning. It's good to be here again this morning. So it was mostly a bullish run across most of our indicators this week. Our total turnover increased by 2.82 times from total of 0.45 billion naira to 1.27 billion naira. Also, our total volume of contracts traded on the exchange increased by 4.28 times, moving from about 723,000 contracts to about 3 million contracts. The number of deals, however, fell by 13.1% from 252 deals to 219 deals. The AFEX commodity index increased by 3.38%, moving from 439.48 points to close at 454.35 points. The AFEX export index also increased by 0.92%, moving from 185.29 points to 186.99 points. Across our volumes traded, the volumes of contracts traded for maize, paddy rice, sorghum, soybean, cashew, and wheat increased compared to the previous week. Across our price, the price of clean sorghum increased by 1.05% to close the trading week at 298.65 naira per cup. To close the trading week at 298 naira 0.65 kobo. Also, the price of clean sesame also increased by 5.06% to close the trading week at 830 naira. The price of maize, however, declined by 0.11% to close the trading week at 293.49 naira. Also, the price of paddy rice declined by 1.58% to close the trading week at 260 naira 0.81 kobo. For more information about our commodity or about AFEX, kindly visit our website at africaexchange.com, and to join our trading platform, you can download our app ComX. Also follow us on our social media platforms at ComX by AFEX. Thank you.
All right, Omotola, thank you so much for that analysis. Still with AFEX now, we talk about weather. It's a great factor when it comes to do with commodities market and, of course, production. So what's currently happening with the commodities market when it comes to the weather? And does 2021-2022 have the same scenario in the commodities market? We have Suleiman, Senior Analyst, Structuring and Origination with AFEX, joining us to have that conversation. Good morning, Suleiman. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
All right, so where are we now since the beginning of the year on the commodities market? Of course, we're talking about weather and how it's affecting production.
Okay. So when you look at commodities market in the year, I think at the beginning of the year, the prevailing condition was the COVID-19 pandemic and its lingering effects. Then we had a little bit of supply chain strains, and also some climatic events were already pushing food prices up when Russia invaded Ukraine in late February. So what happened then was the war pushed price to unprecedented levels, but this has since abated, and this might be due to a deal signed on July 2022, which was intended to free approximately 20 million metric tons of grain stocked in the Black Sea ports. And this has brought some relatively relief to the market, enabling the price of cereals to return to pre-invasion levels. So another important indicator to look at is the FAO Food Price Index, which is the benchmark for the global food commodity prices, and it has declined for the 5th consecutive month now. So it declined by about 1.9% between July and August 2022, although it remains about 7.9% above its 2021 level. So although prices has declined over the past 5 months, it's still significantly higher than what it was at the same time last year. So and when you look at the FFPI, there are 5 sub-indexes of it. We have the cereal, we have the vegetable oil, we have the dairy, we have the meat and the sugar price indices. And a common theme that we notice among all these indices is a sharp and consistent drop in prices over the past 4 to 5 months. And this reflects the larger index. However, they are all still significantly higher than the price level recorded in 2021. So, and when we analyze some of the trends to look out for in the new production season, the most important one to look out for is the effect of the war on Ukraine production levels. As we all know, Ukraine is one of the largest producers and exporters of grain in the global markets, and projections for the 2022-2023 harvest season are currently below the 2021 levels. Another trend to look out for is the protectionist policies of some major exporting countries due to the fallout from the war. So we noticed that the lingering effect of the pandemic, the supply chain problem, has led to many of the largest exporters in the commodities market instituting export bans and export licensing requirements. Another thing to look out for is the rising input costs, which is very, very important, especially fertilizer prices, which has remained at high levels throughout the year and is already causing some farmers to use them sparingly in their planting season, and this may affect production numbers. And the most important thing, as you said, the recent weather event across the globe, especially the recent heat waves in India and China, which are 2 of the largest producers and market for agro-commodities in the world. And these waves are further worsened by the current dry summer being witnessed in Western Europe and some part of the United States. So all these weather events could limit the supply to world market by more than 10 million metric tons of grain
Wow.
during the production season.
So grain seems to be the most affected, especially when you talk about a country like Ukraine and the issue of wheat. Are there other crops other than grain that have been affected that much with all of this?
Okay. So when you look at in terms of the crops that are being affected due to the weather in the world, you have to look at the 4 main diets of human being depend on, which are rice, wheat, corn, and soybean. So they make up almost half of the calories of an average global diet. And 60% of global food production occurs in just 5 countries: China, the United States, India, Brazil, and Argentina. And these are some of the countries that are battling the worst effects of adverse weather conditions. Let's take China and India, for example. They are the largest producer of paddy rice in the world, with India being the largest exporter of these commodities to over 150 countries. The drought conditions that is currently being experienced by these 2 countries will severely affect the yield level of rice in the world. So, and global rice supply is currently projected to fall by 4.1 million metric tons to 697.3 million tons in 2022. And this is primarily due to the reduced production in Pakistan. If we, as been saying on China's news, you can see Pakistan are currently experiencing one of the worst flooding in history. About 70% of the country is overrun with flood currently now. So Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, the 3 of them are one of the biggest producer and consumer of rice in the world. So the China drought has also affected about 1.2 million hectares of land along multiple provinces in China, and most of these provinces affected are the important rice producing area. Another crop to take note of is wheat production. As a result of the continued rainfall shortages across most of the European Union, we are seeing shortfall in wheat production in the world. And also France is expecting their corn harvest to be 20% lower than in 2022 due to record-breaking hot, dry weather. And when you now go to the southern corn nations of South America, we are also witnessing overly arid conditions and threatening nearly half of world soybean production. So a shortfall of more than 80 million tons is expected in soybean production in 2022, with Brazil soybean production already down by 7%, Argentina by 9%, and Paraguay by 37% when you compare it to their 2021 level. So bringing it down to Africa, especially in Northern and Southern Africa, we have seen reduced cereal output in this country. In East Africa, persistent rainfall deficits are sharply curbing production prospects and have already caused extensive animal deaths in 2022. This is mostly notable for food security implication because most of these countries are mainly pastoralist countries. And when you now think of West Africa, Nigeria inclusive, production prospects are a little bit uncertain for 2022, which this is due to the worsening internal conflict in most of in this region, and also an uneven start to the rainy season across the region.
So it doesn't look like 2022 will be a repeat or a similar scenario with 2021, at least if for nothing else, there was no war in Ukraine last year.
Yeah, so it's looking a little bit grim when you compare it to last year, because Ukraine harvest levels are projected to fall by more than 30 million tons, which represents about 30 to 45% drop from last year level. And the main reasons for this are the reduced harvest area due to the ongoing military actions. And when you also look at danger from landmines across various farming communities. Also, most of farmers that planted for the last season, they are unable to ship a large part of last year's harvest. And this has reduced their liquidity. Another thing to look out for is the decreased yield due to reduced access to fertilizer, disrupted timing of planting, and less advanced plant protection, and the ripple effect from increased diesel and fertilizer costs. So when you move from Ukraine, you go to the other side, which is Russia. There is likelihood of good harvest in Russia, but the yield might be lower in upcoming season due to the global trade restrictions that Russia is currently facing. And also vital resources such as hybrid seeds, plant protection products, and to a lesser extent, machinery and software might be subject to import bans, primarily impacting wheat output. So when you now move from these two countries that are currently engaged in this war, you go to other countries, fertilizer shortages is still rampant, and this high prices is expected to reduce yields in countries that depend heavily on fertilizer imports, mainly Brazil, and this will likely further decrease the volume of grain in the world market. So another thing to look out for is what other exporting countries are doing. This can either add more grain to the global supply or further reduce it. On one hand, continued or even further trade restrictions, as we've currently seen since the war started, might further exacerbate global scarcity, while high harvest and loosening of reserves could dampen the impact. So climate events, as I've already highlighted, may also affect the delicate balance. So currently, we don't know this scenario that will prevail during the season.
Well, I mean, I think it looks different from what we had last year in many aspects. Thank you so much, Suleiman, Senior Analyst, Structuring and Origination with AFEX. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, so that was AFEX, and in just a moment, we'll head to the markets.